Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, where the buck stops for the Red Raiders. And we talk Cashaleen and its place in the future of college football. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you for one more round before we head off to Fort Worth for Red Raiders and Horned Frogs West Texas Championship. Battle for the saddle. There's leather on the line. It really gets serious. 2:30 kick, and looking forward to that. And Chris joining us on the other side of his weekly conversation with Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire. And Chris, we'll get into what's going on with Coach McGuire and the Red Raiders. We'll also get into what's going on, well, really, not only in Lubbock, but all across the college football landscape coming up. Revenue sharing in the wind, and that means new things to consider and some changes coming down the pipeline. And want to get into something that will be happening in Fort Worth this weekend, probably going to be making some waves across the Texas Tech landscape. So I want to ask you some questions about this coming up in just a moment. But first, getting back to your conversation with Joey McGuire, it seemed like there was a theme of where the buck stops, so to speak. And in the mind of Joey McGuire, and probably justifiably so, he is where the buck stops, right? Bearing the brunt of the disappointment from last week, obviously, and maybe using it for motivation as they get ready for Saturday.
Yeah, after a game like last weekend, a coach's show after that game is always a bit tricky. I stress out about it and how am I going to, get through it and all that. Joey was great. He's very optimistic that this was, that they will move forward. They will be better for it. And, again, the tests don't get any easier. But I think in the midst of the conversation last night about, a lot of the special teams, and we had played the kind of the statement earlier in the week from Kenny Perry is like, man, this is my fault. I put our team in a bad spot because of what my guys were doing, and all very uncharacteristic based on what we had seen leading up to this. And Joey just he's like, man, don't be hard on my guys. Be hard on me. Talking to the audience and the public and everything. He's like that. He's like, there's no excuse for what happened last Saturday. That's a direct quote. And, he's like, if you want to be hard on anybody, be hard on me, and, we had gotten asked the question, I think maybe we even, was one of the shows earlier in the week about burn the tape.
Yeah, I think that was our Monday episode. Trying to figure out how to use this thing as you move on.
So I said, hey, man, how did you – go about this? Like he goes, well, I'm just going to tell you, there has been times in my past where I have literally dug a hole and ceremonially have burned the tape in front of the team or like buried it is what I mean, where you just like dig a hole, put the VHS tape and he's laughing with the audience or the audience is laughing at him going, he goes, do y'all know what a VHS tape is? And, because there's a lot of folks in the audience that group did, but the younger folks may not have any feel for what one of those looks like. But he's like, hey, in this, there's been plenty of times where I have not rewatched a game. In this case, I very much did. There was a lot to learn. And the one person you can't lie to is the one in the mirror. He agreed that his defense looked like I think his direct quote was night and day from Tucson to in Lubbock versus Baylor. And he was like, we have got to create some takeaways Saturday. We have got to play better defense. We've got to get Taj going, so there's some, what he feels like are some non-negotiables as it relates to the game tomorrow in Cowtown. And I think that you'll see a lot of zone coverage from TCU's defense. So that makes the the game within the game with the receivers and maybe motion and some of those things kind of interesting to follow. But I think he's trying to take all the ownership here for what happened. And I think, because I think he appreciates guys like Kenny and I think he gleaned a lot from, I think he said about 15 meetings with guys. He said, I texted a various group of players, some of my senior or older leaders. He was like, hey, nothing's wrong. Because if you have 5 minutes today, just come by and see me. I just want to visit. And he goes, you always got to tell players that, because anytime you're like, hey, can you come see me? They're like, oh no, I guess I lost my spot, or I'm about to get cut, or who knows what. So he goes, I had to preface everything with, hey, nothing's wrong. I'm just trying to get a vibe for how we got to this point, or we're just trying to get a better feel for things. And he said, we didn't do anything different leading up to this game than we had the first 2 years before the bye or during the bye week. So go figure. That's sports. But that was last night in a nutshell. And we had Juice Johnson and Josh Kelly on as well. Josh Kelly says that everybody in his family has great hands. He doesn't know why he's so good on third down, but I, for one, am glad that he is. And he wants to be a coach after he's done playing, hopefully, a long time in the NFL professionally. And he misses. He's from California, and he misses fish tacos. So that kind of is the Joey McGuire show in about a 5 to 6 minute little squeezed compact recap there.
Well, I was kind of interested to look back over, some prior years with Coach McGuire and sort of the way that a season has ebbed and flowed, because you've had obviously some stuff over the last 2 years that you really liked. I think for the most part, you felt like the team would get better as the season has gone along. You finished strong with some bowl victories. But I'm really curious to see how they handle this one in particular, because I'm not so sure that they had as high of aspirations maybe in some of these previous settings, because you had gotten off to a slow start for the season at large. And so I don't know that I would say it's a bigger disappointment, but maybe a different kind of disappointment whenever you, turn in a dud like you did last Saturday. By the way, aspirations that are still intact, which is all the more important reason as to why you've got to get on with your life. You got to move on as a football team and pick yourself right back up. But Chris, aside from 0.01% or whatever of college football teams, everybody's going to take a loss at one point or another and have something to take away from it. Whether they will or won't, I guess, is up to the coach or up to the team. But heck, we talk a lot of times about how there's a challenge in trying to still teach, coach, and take some lessons from a win when you're successful, because you're feeling like, man, it must all be good because we're winning and rolling on. So the other side of that coin, obviously, in these losses, plenty of lessons to take away from it. And I guess I would like to believe that, going back to yesterday's episode, a lot of it could be rooted in, were we mentally ready to go? What was the emotional dialed in like you want it to be? And if the answer is no to those questions, in some ways, that's something I feel like, all right, you can change in a quick matter of time. Again, easier said than done. But hopefully, as you get into another in-state type of matchup, a little more easily coming by some of that energy. At least I'd like to think so. And certainly going on the road, man, I think can be very galvanizing for any team in any sport. Kind of get insulated and get into this us against everybody type of thing. So I think sometimes it'll bring a team a little closer, especially if you're going for a couple of weeks like Texas Tech is. Again, the things that I'm forcing my wife to tell me as I fall asleep at night to make me feel good about what's going on this week. That's kind of the rosier side of it, though, right? But traveling with the team like you have for so many years, there's something sort of insulating and unifying about going on the road into somebody else's house.
Yeah, and I think especially so when you go to the Metroplex. I think that it just adds to it. Is a lot of folks go back to their roots and home, if you will. There's a lot of players trying to negotiate with their teammates on securing more tickets. And I did have a birdie tell me that if you go on TCU's website and you use the code alumni, I think you can also purchase tickets until I guess they find out that they shut that down. But if there's Tech fans out there trying to buy tickets, I think that's the That's the code.
Good to know.
Wink, wink. Yeah. So, anyways, there you go.
Good to know. I want to get into this other subject, which is really fascinating. Not necessarily something we're going to see the impact of, in the next 24 to 48 hours, but obviously groundwork having to be laid for the future of what college athletics is going to bring to your door as an athletics department, specifically within a program like obviously football. First, today's episode brought to you by ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. So just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you're going to feel your best tomorrow. So go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use our code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantees. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout for 15% off. Today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks. Testing your skills on PrizePicks this football season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports and the best way to spice up any game, anytime. You think you got what it takes to win up to 100 times your money? All you got to do is select 2 to 6 players, pick more or less on their projected stats, place your entry, and boom, you're ready to roll. PrizePicks is not only the best way to get action on sports in most states, including Texas, but PrizePicks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When the picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. With easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and a giant selection of players, projections, and stat categories, it's no surprise that PrizePicks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So get in on the fun and the winning and download the PrizePicks app today and use our code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play only $5. Again, that's our code LOCKEDONCollege on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you just play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. With PrizePicks, run your game. And so I'll turn this over to you to sort of set the table, because this was something that obviously was I don't think, at least as far as our conversations go, necessarily on the script or whatever, when you kick open the week or you kick open the last couple of weeks or get into the season. You had an opportunity to be involved in conversations with Matador Club leadership, Cody Campbell himself, as it relates to something that's happening this weekend, right? And I imagine once it does happen and sort of some things begin to trickle out, probably get some attention across Red Raider Nation and maybe even beyond. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think later today in the Metroplex, Regent Cody Campbell, who I've known for a long time, he's a friend, he is going to present to various folks there in Fort Worth, trying to educate, and I think there will be a series of these kind of meetings trying to educate the fan base, and he kind of tasked me with that, and so we'll try to. This is going to take a while. I don't know if we'll get to everything today. This is going to be a thing that we can kind of educate for really the next foreseeable future. It is wild. It is a new. I literally, after I was done with kind of consuming this information, I thought I'm literally going to have to unlearn everything that I've ever known about recruiting and all the things, and it's literally it's just all gonna change. Some of this we have kind of covered, but the gist is this is a big time for Texas Tech in the upcoming months and couple of years. I think there is some legitimacy to the super conference breakaway. And I think that you're trying to ensure that you are very much a part of what is going to go on in the future. I think we're talking the next 3 to 4 years. There's some thought that there could. So But why is it important for people to ensure that football and basketball or whatever is doing well? Well, I think what they feel is that there's a direct correlation into how relevant, how well these programs are doing is the front porch of the athletics program or the front porch of the university, is that there's a direct tie to enrollment. Some schools are tailing off with enrollment, or they're flattening out. Texas Tech is kind of in that category, and that's a bit scary, I think, right now, because when enrollment flattens out or drops, it affects everything. And whenever you're increasing enrollment, even if it's just slightly, you're in a good space. And I think that it's harder to get kids to go to college. And so, what Cody's going to explain to a lot of the folks there is that people want to go to college because they want to be a part of the experience, and no better experience than Jones AT&T, the USA, and all those things. But what you're about to get into with revenue sharing and with this house settlement is a completely new way of doing things. And so, Calvin, I'll just start throwing some terms at you, and I'll let you kind of take this wherever you want to go. And again, we will not be able to get to everything in depth today. There's just not enough time. But I think it will spur questions, and one topic will lead to people going, well, how is this going to work? How is this going to work? It's all fascinating. So we know that there's going to be essentially what is coming is a salary cap, if you will. Okay. We know that is going to be in effect for next academic year. Basically, by July 1 of next summer, Joey McGuire will have to have his roster trimmed to 105. He'll largely have to decide how many of those 105 are actually on scholarship. And every other sport, is kind of the same. But and then you're going to have to decide, how are we spending our money, and are we going to spend it all? Because you don't have to, but there is now a limit on what you can spend. And there's a limit on what the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Texases, and the Texas Techs, everybody's alike here that can spend, and everybody can choose to spend that money differently. You also have to decide, which this is where we're going to get weird here a little bit, and I just wasn't prepared for how drastic this was going to be. But put your NFL hat on right now, and we'll just talk in terms of football. When you start talking to recruits like this coming December that you're going to sign these kids, you can get into, hey man, we're going to sign you a 1-year deal. We're going to sign you to a 2-year deal. We're going to sign you to a 3-year deal. All that is negotiable. We are going to sign you for this much money, and that's what we're committing to you for a 2-year deal. There is buyouts that will be in these contracts. If you're not doing what you're supposed to, we will simply buy you out and away you go. All this money, though, like if you buy a player out of his contract, that money counts against your cap, and the cap is a hard cap. And if you go over 85 scholarships, if you go to an 86th scholarship, for example, two things. One, that anything over that 85, that dollar figure allotted to that 86th scholarship, or the 87th and the 88th and the 89th, all the way up to 105, if you wanted to go that, all that money counts against your cap. So it's less money you can actually give to players. And if you come up with an 86 scholarship that you give to football, you better come up with one for women's sports too, as I understand it. And so, which also must count against your cap. So all these bloated roster numbers and limits that you saw, it's not what people thought. It's not, let's go give 105 scholarships. Let's give 35 to baseball. Let's give 15 to men's hoops. Let's give 200 to track, whatever. That is what you are allowed to do if you want. However, you may be able to give very little money to your players, whereas the other school down the road that's only given the minimal scholarships or what is factored in, they can give a whole lot of money to football. So you follow me?
Yeah.
So, but we got multi-year agreements. We have contract buyouts that are two-sided, and the school needs your help. That in a nutshell is, because I think what they're going to try to impress upon people is, Cowan, we have feared some of these things. It's never necessarily been realized, thankfully. But imagine the economic impact on Lubbock, Texas, and just Texas Tech in general if you're playing New Mexico State every week, and you're on the wrong side of this deal, and that's what you want to avoid. You want to avoid at all costs. What you want to be a part of the things, and I think that thankfully, because of the people like Cody and Dusty and Kirby's foresight and just the general folks, you have a good handle on things, but you're trying to stay ahead of the curve. And so they're going to try, or ahead of the curve, excuse me. You're going to try to educate your fan base into making them understand we desperately need your help. We intend to, not every school will be able to pay this 21.5 or whatever it is, $1 million bill every year.
First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Say you're watching the game, you get hit with a hunch, an instinctual calling. Well, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you're going to place your bets to keep up with everything going down in real time as you submit that slip. And right now, FanDuel is going to get you started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed with only a $5 bet out the gate at FanDuel.com.
Will everybody in the Big 12 be able to foot that bill every year? It's a yearly bill. And that is the max money you can give. Yes, there are some NIL deals you can get outside of this. They must be legitimate. They are going to be they will be gone over with a fine, there's no skirting it, in reality. There's no, hey, I own a restaurant, wink, wink, I'm going to hire you to do a commercial for $1 million. Okay, so does that sound good? There'll be no more of that. People may try this. People may try to find the gray area, but it just doesn't look like anything like this is going to be allowed to go on, which in a way could be really good for Texas Tech, because now you are the same as Ohio State and Texas or whatever as far as what you are allowed to do. So with that, I've thrown some of it at you, but we can go back and forth a little bit here.
I'm curious about on that last part. Is this still under the NCAA thumb? Is there a projection of another or prediction of another enforcing or governmental body? Or
there will be a clearinghouse, but see, you're dealing with the government, because this is house settlement that people are agreeing to, and there's parameters in here that everybody's going to agree to that it has to do with this suit that was filed, that has been litigated, and is going to still roll through the court system, but it becomes, I think, like April the 7th is when it becomes, when all NIL deals are null and void, collectives become null and void and all that, and then everything must be implemented by July 1. I think it's kind of what you're looking at.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I mean, some things to think about. How much money, or how much of this money does football get? How much of this money does basketball get? What sports don't hardly get any?
The others.
Do you
you named the two, I think.
Yeah. Do you, I think recruiting classes now become very different. Like, in other words, a recruiting class ranking, you could make the argument now, will become as meaningless as anything that we can ever talk about. Not that we won't talk about it, simply because some schools may say, I'm only going to operate and compensate upperclassmen. I'm not going to dabble with a pipeline or having, worrying about paying, so I'm not really going to get into the recruiting game anymore.
Does that mean portal? Are you talking like otherwise it'd be the portal?
Well, Well, no, I'm what I'm saying is like high school recruiting rankings. But
Can
yeah,
you do that without? I mean, are you going to be a sinking ship eventually if you're not throwing money at some of the prep level kids?
you can. Well, I don't know if we know the answer to that. I think some schools may say, okay, here's how much money we're gonna spend on football. We're just going to spend it on 50 guys and give those 50 a lot more than what other people can give their 85 or 105. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah,
I
gotcha.
mean, there's not going to be necessarily a way of doing things. There's going to be a million different ways to do things.
Yeah,
And whoever manages this best, it's going to be tricky. And like my questions were, will we all be able to know who's on a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal? Will we all know what they're being compensated by the institution? Because there's no more NLI anymore, no more national letter of intent anymore.
yeah,
They'll sign a financial aid agreement and essentially sign a contract. Now, you can fire a player for cause on this contract too if he gets arrested or if he doesn't do what he's supposed to, and you've laid it out and like, you're not doing this, so we're going to let you go. We don't owe you anything. But if you're just like, man, he's not developing, he doesn't love it, he sucks, we don't want him anymore, he hadn't done anything wrong, he's showing up on time and everything like that, we're just going to move on. You're going to have to compensate him to go away, which that money counts against your cap. I mean, there's a million conversations to get into here, and I've only kind of begun to just scratch the surface here because it made my head want to explode.
Sounds like you got to really be judicious with what you're investing and who you're investing it to, which is, I guess, no different than the real world. But you could really have some regrettable moments, and I'm sure everyone will at some point in time have a guy that didn't
almost
work out.
Impossible not to.
That's yeah. I was curious, kind of on the in-game front, as it relates to contracts. I mean, is it just going to be almost a a photocopy of what we expect from professional sports, in that you could have like season incentives and things along these bonus structures? I mean, should we just go ahead and get fully accustomed to what we're already accustomed to on the professional level?
I don't think any of that will necessarily exist because it's going to be a hard and fast number, because you have to allocate and show your work to, I think, whether it's the NCAA or the government or however they solidify who's kind of seeing how everybody is doing this and where the money is going. And again, some school may say, man, we only have enough to really pay out $15 million a year. Okay, well, that's their prerogative. But what I'm telling you is there's a hard line on how high you can go, which I think Texas Tech absolutely intends to hit that line every year.
Gotcha.
As revenues increase, that number will slightly grow. In other words, as your TV contract goes up or whatever, you'll be able to, and again, everybody's will stay the same. It's a big formula to try to keep everybody the same. So it's not like you'll only be able to spend 20 and Blue Blood down the road or, across the way is able to spend $6 million more than you. I think NIL deals will be very, very vetted and public, and you can still go get those. So if Adidas wants to sign one of your players to a shoe deal or a brand ambassador deal, they will be able to do that outside of what you're doing. And is that going to be tricky? I don't know, but it's going to be very much vetted. And I think what the courts are trying to impress upon people is, we will shut your ass down and death penalty you if you're agreeing to these terms and you start operating out of this. We're gonna send you the way of SMU. And so we'll just kind of see what this looks like. But it's pretty fascinating how drastic. But changes are coming, and we all better get used to it.
That seems so difficult, borderline impossible to police as far as the NIL stuff, just because we're talking about the free market. And I mean, so many things you might hear with a professional athlete in a shoe company or whatever it might be. Well, where'd that number come from? Yeah, I'm sure there's some, formula for the most part as far as projecting what you expect to get as a result of exposure and impressions and things. But man, that just seems like Like, who's got the guidelines for that in the
And I think
NCAA
that
office?
it's funny you asked that. I think that the clearinghouse has access to market value from influencers to apparel
Yeah.
deals to I think they will have access to what most everybody is doing and be able to because they're just trying to create fair guidelines, which may be impossible. And again, I'm still learning as we go. I'm sure some people will try to push this, but I think that's the. And again, we're not to the end here, but it's just been impressed upon me that this is happening. That you can still get NIL deals. Like for example, I believe your softball player that is making. I think she's got a pretty hefty as part of her agreement with Marucci, I guess it is, which is sells bats and different apparel and all that. And I think that she's a face of the sport, so it makes some sense, So that is all legitimate.
That's my bad. I was thinking the Caramel Corn Company. I should have thought softball bats.
No, you're good. You're good.
Well, it's just kind of funny still to think about. There's somebody somewhere or a group of somebodies that says, okay, here's where we draw the line. This is appropriate. This is inappropriate. It's kind of crazy. And I feel like I predicted this, and not to suggest that it's a bad thing, but years ago, whenever people were talking about, hey, we want like collective bargaining or we want revenue sharing, et cetera. And we had just kind of got into the NIL realm, which was totally wide open, Wild West, free willy. And I said at that time, I think at some point, if you really go down this road, student athletes are going to be saying hello to the new sheriff. Surprise, it's the old sheriff. It's the NCAA. And you're right back into these quote unquote kind of rigid structures as to what is allowed to be shared or invested. And obviously, Chris, I mean, I think I would just have to guess that eventually down the road again, we'll sort of be revisiting things when we're not getting enough. There's some shared, but there's not enough shared because it's such a huge revenue generator when we're talking about specifically football and in most cases, a lot of cases, men's basketball. So I kind of feel like we have wound back up to like, oh, okay, now who again is calling the shots? Oh, yeah, it's the NCAA. We'll be right back to what is admissible or inadmissible. I am curious. I assume this, but you could confirm. The audience for this educational seminar on behalf of the Matador Club or whoever it might be, I'm just assuming these are very enthusiastic and well-resourced Texas Tech supporters, or does this stretch outside of that? What's the audience for this?
No, I think very much so. I think that, you're going to you're going to owe this 21 plus million every year, at least to start, and then it'll incrementally grow. Where that money will come from, we've kind of touched on this some, is the actual institution, big donors, and then they're going to try to crowdsource the I don't want to say lower level because everybody's a donor. That's a help, but compile folks that aren't as well off, I would say, and compile that, and this is going to be something that they try to tap into. But it's not just about athletics, but it is because I think that this is you're kind of fighting for your. For Texas Tech in general right now, just for relevancy. And there's a next couple of years which are very key for how you set yourself up. And there are no plans to fundraise anymore for facilities. There are no more plans to fundraise for anything other than money toward this yearly bill due for right now. They have. That's why I think so much went into the South End Zone and why they're so proud of it and why they wanted to do it right, because now they can say we've done this, we've tweaked the arena and the Womble, and we've added on to the baseball stadium, and we've done this and we've done that and all that. And I think now you get back, and because you knew this was coming in some form, and now you get back and say, okay, now we can focus our efforts on trying to pay this bill that's due every year. And I think there's some curiosity, if anything, if every Big 12 school will be able to pay it every year. I think
it sounds like it, not to the max extent.
Yeah, I mean, we could speculate, but I think you are absolutely in good enough shape to be able to pay that bill with the help of everything, but maybe not everybody else is. So,
Yeah.
and the thing is, like if you're a Big Ten or you're an SEC school, that's the sad part is they don't need any help from any outside source. They've got so much TV revenue coming in, they'll just allocate portions of their TV revenue and go, yeah, okay, pay it. And then you've got a lot of money left over that they'll increase coaches' salaries, come try to scoop up this assistant coach off of your. I mean, so that's a different set of problems, but that's just the reality of kind of what we're getting into. But you want to continue to be on the right side of this deal.
So be on the lookout for some discussion regarding these upcoming changes on a Texas Tech front, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to process in days, weeks, months, years, decades, I don't know, to come. So we'll be here to consider it all with you. Chris, appreciate the insight on all that, man. And I think it's just great to hear as a Tech fan that you feel like you are well positioned. You cannot predict what the future is going to hold, but definitely don't feel like you're lagging behind as far as preparing for this future. So enjoyed the insights and perspectives as always, man. And we'll see you for the next one on the other side of a Fandango in Fort Worth. Enjoy Cowtown and hopefully enjoying a ball game, man. Have a great weekend.
I plan on it. And if we've led you to have more questions about what we just talked about, that's what the Matador Mob is for. We can do another mailbag episode or kind of, get into some of this next week, but it's a lot. It's coming quickly. So we'll see kind of where it leads us. But hey, man, guns up. We'll see you in Cowtown, and appreciate the time all week, folks. And you may hear from us later today. I don't know. Just keep your head on a swivel. We'll see.
That's right. You got to get subscribed so you miss nothing on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And yes, also check out the Matador Mob. If you have not just yet, hit the show notes for the link to a free 14-day trial, your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text messages straight to your phone. Enjoyed it as always. We appreciate your time. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.